tell them who you are.
I've been retired 8 years. I don't know who I am. I'm Jim Burson. I worked with Charlie at the radio station in Los Angeles for 28 years, something like that. A long, long time. I've written down what I'm going to say because I can remember, well, first off, being retired 8 years, my memory isn't as good as when I was working. It was no good then. I remember when I was in high school, I was asked to give one of the speeches at the graduation ceremonies. And so I wrote a speech at home, and I thought I had it memorized, and I wasn't going to fool around with any cards or anything like that to cue me. And I got up there, and I got about 30 seconds into my speech and just drew a blank. And I had to ad-lib it. So from that point on, when I give a speech of any sort, I write it down so I can look down at the thing. What I wanted to talk about was all of us do have a handful of people that we call great friends, and they're not just good friends, they're great friends. Charlie was one of mine. We first met back in 1968 in Philadelphia at KYW when he came up from Washington for some meetings. Charlie was the head of engineering at the Westinghouse News Bureau at that time. Now, a lot of people don't realize Charlie wasn't always on the air. He had been earlier in life and everything, but he also was an engineer. So I met him in '68 in Philadelphia when he was an engineer. And then we met again the following year in Florida at a seminar, and the two of us decided it might be kind of fun to go to the dog races at Biscayne, down below Fort Lauderdale. Well, it began pouring rain shortly after we got to the track, and neither of us really had ever bet on a greyhound race. Greyhounds are the dogs, for those of you who aren't acquainted with that particular kind of dog. Neither of us had ever bet on one, so we grabbed a program and we started looking over all the entries and thought, well, we might learn which dogs ran best on a muddy track, because it was really pouring rain. Well, about that time, remember, I can still picture him. There was an older fellow, had a trench coat, kind of tattered, and he had about a 5-day growth of beard, and he walked up to us when we were looking over our programs. He had his own program in his hand, and he told us we looked like a couple of newcomers to the racing world. We were. And he helped us pick some winners. That's what he called them. And being novices in the canine sport and figuring he was just temporarily on the downside of a long gambling career, we went along with him and hurried over to the betting window. Well, let me tell you, the old guy didn't know what the hell he was talking about. It was pouring rain so hard along the backstretch, you couldn't even see those dogs as they chased along after the mechanical rabbit, which kind of teases them along the track. And we kept looking, and some of the dogs came out of the fourth turn, thundering and splashing, and we looked at that dog. No, that wasn't him, that wasn't the number, that wasn't the dog. And finally, our dog came through dead last. Well, our bosses got our expense reports for the seminar trip, including a few extra bucks hidden in there as a business luncheon. About 3 years later, our paths crossed once again when we both worked as anchors at KFWB. For most of a quarter of a century, we shared time together in the studio and later at the hospital while Charlie was awaiting his new heart. He never complained, and he never said, "Why me? Why this bad ticker?" He simply faced up to his situation, and he was anxious to get on with the operation and begin a new life with someone else's pump. Well, he got that heart, of course, and it served him well for many years. Doris and I would visit with Charlie and Carolyn when they moved to Lancaster, but then we moved to Northern California following our retirements. We stayed in touch by telephone and email, and the two of them visited with us when they traveled north to see Mike up in the Sacramento area. Doris would like to have been here today to say hello, goodbye to Charlie, but as many of you know, she has her own severe heart problem. She sends her love, though, as I do, to Carolyn, to Mike, and to Chris and your family. Life passes quickly. Great friends come into our lives, but sometimes they leave just a little too early. We should all cherish those friendships. I know I'm going to always treasure the memory of Charlie.